He was just another kid, bullied and broken, until he made a choice. Trained by Korea's best UFC fighter, he's back, not for revenge, but to rule the school.
The story starts with a group of boys chatting in their group chat. One of them tells everyone to turn on their TVs and watch Coming Fist on the JMTS channel right away. When another boy asks if he is exaggerating again, he insists he isn't, saying that the class loser Eusang is on TV. The others react in shock, quickly switch on their TVs, and burst into laughter when they see Eusang getting beaten up in the show. As Eusang struggles to fight back, the boys mock him in the chat, calling him a pig and wondering how he even ended up there. While he keeps taking hits, one of them asks if anyone saw his first interview. When another boy says no, the first one reveals that Eusang spoke with confidence, saying he would prove himself with actions, not words. The group laughs, but their amusement turns to disbelief when they notice Eusang wearing their school uniform, realizing he is embarrassing both himself and the school. One calls him an attention seeker, while another scoffs, saying he must not have gotten beaten enough at school and had to go on a show to get hit again. As the fight ends, every judge refuses to let Eusang move to the next round, bringing up his interview. One judge, remembering his bold claim, asks how he feels now. Eusang stays silent, thinking that even though he is just 17, he should still get a chance to prove himself. Seeing his silence, the judge says that Eusang failed to show any fighting skills, just like he had promised. Another judge interrupts, guessing that Eusang probably got confident after winning against some school kids. But instead of agreeing, Eusang hesitates before admitting that he isn't good at fighting. He's actually terrible at it. The crowd falls silent, now wondering why he even joined the show. Shaking, Eusang confesses that he is nervous and explains the meaning of his nickname, Tetris Teeth, which he used while applying. He says he only picked it to avoid getting rejected and apologizes for lying, still trembling. He compares a 3-minute fight they just watched to his whole school life before breaking into tears. He talked about how life is unfair, depending on money, power, and looks. He then shares how classmates, following orders from their gang leader, used to beat him. While being hit, he once looked at the leader, wondering what made them different besides weight and facial features. He started to understand how unfair the world was, realizing there was no place for him to feel safe. But after one brutal beating left him lying in an alley, a girl approached and asked if he was okay. At that moment, Eusang realized that the rare kindness he received was the only thing keeping him going. Opening his swollen eyes, he recognized the girl as Jian Lee, the only kind student in his class full of bullies. She took out ointments and gently applied them to his wounds. Eusang blushed, seeing her as a source of warmth in his miserable life. The next morning, while brushing his teeth, he got a message from Jian, asking if he wanted to watch a movie with her that weekend. Shocked, he rubbed his eyes and checked again, struggling to believe it was real. Jian explained that she had 2 tickets, but her friend couldn't come. She told him the movie was at 4 p.m. and reassured him that he didn't have to come if he didn't want to. Still in disbelief, Eusang read her message again and again before finally agreeing. That weekend, he reached Karaoke Byamchin Coins, where Jian had told him to come. She had arrived early and was waiting in room 4. Checking his phone, he made sure he was in the right place and wondered if he had dressed properly. He had picked a simple outfit, a sweater and jeans, but felt unsure if it looked strange. Before entering, he reminded himself that he needed to thank her for helping him against the bullies. However, as soon as he stepped inside, he froze. Jian was sitting with a group of their classmates. His heart sank, sensing something was wrong. One student noticed him and smirked, saying he had arrived faster than expected. The students mocked him, calling him an idiot, while Eusang still struggled to understand what was happening. He looked around and saw Jian, who casually told her friend to cut the bed in half. When the boy complained that it was too much, he said he would have suggested a cut of 50,000 won if he had known Eusang would come this easily. Jian laughed, calling him greedy but agreeing to pay him 150,000 won. The boy then revealed that he was supposed to win 300,000 won if Eusang had confessed to Jian within a month. The whole thing had been a bet worth just 300,000 won. The students looked at Eusang, who was still confused, and praised Juyin for her acting. Annoyed, she glanced at Eusang and muttered that he should have sent a message before coming. Just then, another student returned from the restroom, greeted Eusang, and asked Juyin if she was cheating on her boyfriend. Eusang, shocked, called the boy crazy, but he only smirked and asked if Juyin was upset about losing the bet. As Juyin sighed and agreed, the boy pointed at Eusang, telling her to stop giving him false hope and focus on her real boyfriend instead. Hearing that, Eusang slowly turned toward Juyin, only to see her sitting next to a boy with his arm around her waist. Juyin hugged her boyfriend slightly and casually said she always took care of him. At that moment, Eusang finally understood it had all been a bet. Remembering the night Juyin helped him, he realized even that had been an act. Moments later, the students dragged him to an open area and ordered him to stand still. One of the boys ran at him full speed and slammed his knee into Eusang's leg, sending him crashing down. Some students briefly worried he might be hurt, but they quickly turned their attention back to Juyin. Furious that Eusang hadn't confessed and cost her 300,000 won, she ordered the boy to hit him again. As the student continued to attack Eusang, he lost all hope. Hours passed as he endured the beating. By the end, he lay on the ground, unable to move. Juyin eventually walked up to him, gave a fake apology, and wished him luck before leaving. Lying there, Eusang burned with rage, wondering why Juyin had ever pretended to be kind to him, only to betray him in the end. He questioned what made her choose him for this cruel game. He knew that after this, he would either completely break or lose his mind. As he finishes his story, all the judges approve him and let him move to the next round. The audience gasps in shock, realizing that every judge passed him. Some start clapping, admiring Eusang for still standing and fighting after everything. Meanwhile, the boys in the group chat react with disbelief, calling the show rigged. Eusang stands before the judges, tears streaming down his face as he thanks them. As he continues expressing his gratitude, he realizes that, for the first time, he has chosen a different path, one where he embraces the madness. Big audition shows stay popular as long as participants have talent, allowing anyone to step into the spotlight. As viewership increases, production costs also rise. Not only do contestants compete, but TV channels also spend heavily to bring in top mentors. In the Korean martial arts world, Beamchin Choi stands out. He is Korea's best UFC fighter, ranked third in the light heavyweight division, and still competes while preparing for the championship. Beamchin picks Eusang Lee as one of his team members for coming fifth season 2. The second episode airs, showing the first training session, running 400 meters in 2 minutes. The athletes push themselves through 30 rounds, a tough challenge even for experienced fighters. The sprints last an hour, mixed with intense workouts, but one contestant collapses before finishing. Eusang faints in the 7th round, failing the first task. Viewers who had once cheered for him after his speech in the first episode now turn against him after watching the show. His school bullies mock him for passing out again, calling him a pig. They laugh at how he can't even change schools anymore since the whole country knows he was bullied. A month and a half later, a man standing beside Beamchin watches the team climb ropes and jokes that they move faster than monkeys. His eyes focus on Eusang, and he comments on his fast improvement, noting that he now climbs even better than some others. As Eusang lands, the man observes his body and points out how much stronger he looks. At that moment, a reporter walks up to Eusang and asks if it is time for an interview. Eusang smiles and agrees. The youngest reporter in the group blushes, noticing that he looks thinner than last week. As she walks beside him, she starts to understand why his popularity keeps rising. Eusang suddenly calls out, pointing out that she sometimes speaks formally and other times casually with him. He asks her to speak casually from now on. The reporter nods calmly and continues walking with him. When they reach the interview area, Eusang sits in front of rows of cameras. One reporter asks if he wants to make it to the live stage since he only needs one more win. Eusang pauses before saying that he has no such goal. He explains that he never joined the tournament to win. He expresses his gratitude and insists that he doesn't want to embarrass his mentor, Beamchin Choi. As he talks about Beamchin, He remembers a past training session where he was holding a bridge pose using only his neck while Byamchin sat beside him, observing. Byamchin had told him that this kind of training, which truly strengthens a body, was rare. Encouraging Eusang, he explained that a strong neck helps a fighter stay standing after taking a hit. Eusang now states that his only goal is to do his best as a way to repay Byamchin for his teachings. Looking straight into the cameras, he declares that those who doubted him because of his age will soon regret it. The interview ends, and the manager signals a crew to prepare for Chul-ho Lee's turn. Feeling pleased, he notes that Eusang's interview went well and expects even more public interest once the footage is slightly edited. He comments that Eusang has a strong presence, making him interesting to watch. The manager adds that people are drawn to Eusang's journey. It starts with pity, moves into frustration, then turns into relief as he overcomes obstacles through hard work. Lastly, he points out that Eusang's natural expressions and movements make him visually appealing. As the fight for the semifinals begins, the manager carefully watches Eusang, noticing a shift in his eyes. Something raw, like a wild instinct. His assistant observes and comments that Eusang might struggle to secure a spot. Eusang takes a clean hit to the face but steadies himself, refusing to fall. His opponent, Myung-sung Hwang, is 24 years old and a skilled fighter. He has won the second super lightweight boxing championship and once held the 5th WBA Asian welterweight title. Holding his stance, Hwang spotted a flaw in Eusang's guard, a small gap he can take advantage of. Feeling a little guilty about fighting a high schooler, he decides to end the match quickly. However, as Hwang moves in, Eusang suddenly steps closer, causing Hwang's punch to land lightly instead of dealing full damage. Regaining balance, Hwang rushes forward again for a strong hit, knowing Eusang is still recovering. But once again, Eusang closes a gap, forcing Hwang to back off after another weak punch. Realizing something, Hwang suspects Eusang is using clinch tactics, a boxing technique where a fighter gets close to prevent the opponent from landing proper strikes. Glancing at Byamchin Choi, he figures out that Eusang's mentor likely planned this to drain his energy. Not want to fall into the trap, Hwang suddenly speeds up and throws a rapid flurry of punches, keeping Eusang from clinching. Using his best jab technique, he wonders if Eusang can keep up. Checking the time, he sees that only a minute has passed, meaning he still has plenty of time to turn the fight in his favor. As he keeps punching, he realizes Eusang has no good options left, except for a low tackle or kick. Choosing a low kick, Hwang moves around Eusang, staying in control. Meanwhile, another mentor watching the fight notes that Hwang lacks the ability to end it with a single strike. Instead, he will have to rely on a technique called center hell, also known as center sandbag. It involves extremely fast footwork, draining energy but allowing attacks from all sides. It is a powerful yet exhausting strategy. As Hwang keeps hitting Eusang from different angles, he sees that a gap is forming in Eusang's defense. Sensing his chance, he prepares for a final strike. At that moment, Eusang recalls a conversation with Byamchin Choi. Byamchin had once asked which martial art was strongest in street fights, boxing, Muay Thai, Judo, or something else. While holding a plank with Byamchin sitting on his back, Eusang had guessed boxing or Muay Thai. Byamchin had dismissed the answer, saying that the strongest fighter is simply the one who wins. He explained that debating which fighting style is better is pointless, since every martial art has its own rules. Byamchin had given an example. Clinch tactics and hugging an opponent when cornered could break their rhythm and allow time to recover. A takedown could also buy 10 seconds of rest. However, street fights were different. Clinching could leave a fighter open to a powerful knee strike, and a takedown could make them vulnerable to a knockout. He had told Eusang that no fighter is perfect. The key is finding the opponent's weakness and taking advantage of it. As Hwang closes in for the final attack, Eusang suddenly executes a free reap, sweeping Hwang's legs and making him crash hard onto the ground. The crowd gasps, while Byamchin remains calm, observing Eusang's immediate follow-up. Without hesitating, Eusang throws a series of punches at Hwang, who is still off balance on the mat. Remembering Byamchin's advice to unleash all his energy at the right moment, Eusang knows that failing to take this chance could cost him the match. Determined, he increases his speed, landing more punches with growing strength. In his final moment of awareness, Huang realizes his mistake. Losing control for even a second had cost him the entire fight. Eusang delivers a final set of blows, knocking Huang unconscious. The referee quickly steps in, stopping the match. Moments later, the official results are announced. Eusang Lee wins against Myung-Sung Huang, one of the top contenders. With a technical knockout in just 2 minutes and 35 seconds, Eusang secures his place in the semifinals. Eusang keeps training hard, pushing through months of intense muscle pain. Even a small touch makes him flinch, but he refuses to stop, determined to change himself completely. On the day of his semifinal match, he walks in with confidence. The crowd cheers loudly, admiring both his strength and appearance. Feeling the energy around him, he realizes that this match is even more exciting than before. But he quickly shifts focus to his opponent, understanding his tough situation. His semi-final match is against Beamji Shim, a national wrestler in the cruiserweight class, weighing 91 kilograms. As soon as the match starts, Eusang is knocked down instantly. Lying on the ground, he smiles, knowing this loss is not meaningless. Standing beside him, Shim stays calm, while Eusang realizes that even in defeat, he earns respect for making it this far as a 17-year-old amateur. His story spreads fast, with TV shows and newspapers covering his journey from a bullied student to a coming fifth semifinalist. A few days later, Eusang returns to school. He walks in wearing a cap, hoodie, and mask, avoiding attention. His classmates whisper, unsure who he is. As he reaches his desk and removes his disguise, they confirm it's Eusang. Ignoring them, he approaches Daeun Lee, a 17-year-old student known as Big Bone. The class falls silent. Unlike most coming fist contestants who get loud praise, Eusang carries a different aura. Standing beside Daeun, he calmly states that he arrived at school later than him that day. Daeun looks confused until Eusang reminds him of how he used to beat him every time he came later. No matter how early Eusang arrived, Daeun had always demanded he come even earlier, backing it up with violence. Daeun laughs, brushing it off, saying Eusang must have imagined things over the holidays. But as he stands up, his expression changes. He looks closely at Eusang and realizes he has grown taller. Acknowledging this, he comments on his height. Eusang coldly replies, calling him an idiot and pointing out that he only looks taller because Daeun has stayed the same height since they first met. At that moment, Eusang remembers Byamchin's words about battle. His mentor had once asked if he knew the saying, "Know your enemy and yourself, and you will never be in danger." When Eusang agreed, Byamchin told him to focus only on himself for now, saying that understanding oneself is far more important than analyzing others. He explained that people waste too much time trying to figure themselves out. Then, Byamchin revealed the results of Eusang's Big 5 personality test. His conscientiousness was 85, openness 55, extroversion 34, and neuroticism 38. Before revealing the last score, he paused, saying this was Eusang's biggest problem. His agreeableness was an extremely high 97. Eusang had listened as Byamchin explained that such people tend to be kind, easily feel pity, and naturally sympathize with those in tough situations. At that moment, Eusang recalled seeing a classmate being bullied. Byamchin went on, saying such people are honest and brave, often stepping in to help others in unfair situations. Eusang remembered defending the bullied boy, only to become the new target himself. Byamchin explained that highly agreeable people dislike conflict and struggle in aggressive situations, making it hard for them to solve problems with force. Thinking of all the times he had suffered at the hands of bullies, Eusang listened carefully as Byamchin clarified that while kindness wasn't bad, acting on it had been his downfall. However, Byamchin reassured him that with proper training, he would also learn to fight mentally. He confidently stated that everyone he trained would succeed. His goal was to help Eusang become more assertive and less overly sympathetic. Back in the classroom, Daeun's face darkens at being called an idiot. Angry, he accuses Eusang of acting arrogant after gaining fame and throws a punch. But suddenly he stops, hearing a noise. Looking at the door, He sees their homeroom teacher entering. The teacher looks at them and asks what's going on. Eusang glances at him, realizing this is the perfect moment. He casually wraps an arm around Daehun's shoulder and denies any fight, saying they were just messing around. Daehun freezes in shock as a teacher, believing Eusang tells him to sit. Eusang obeys but leans in to whisper to Daehun, reminding him of how he once used the same excuse when they were sent to the teacher's office earlier that year. Daehun remembers that moment. He had claimed they weren't fighting, but were actually close friends. Eusang coldly states that Daehun had used that excuse for himself, while he just used it to save him. Before walking away, he lightly smacks the back of Daehun's head, leaving him stunned. As class ends, two students discuss whether Eusang will fight Daehun. One notes his boldness in standing up to feared big-boned Daehun, but the other argues that Daehun has already lost. He explains that Eusang is not just any fighter. He reached the top 4 in Coming Fist Season 2. Looking at Eusang, he continues, saying that not only martial arts fans, but the entire community is talking about him. He's just a high schooler, yet he defeated one of the strongest fighters in the tournament. He describes Eusang as relentless, saying no one else could have changed so much and improved so quickly in just 2 months. As the bell rings, Eusang becomes aware of his nervousness. He is back in school, the place where he was once bullied, but he recalls Byamchin's advice to stay calm and fight as he trained. A memory of a basic striking technique comes to mind, one that Byamchin had taught him, saying it's the quickest way to set up a takedown. Standing up, Eusang remembers his mentor's words. This technique does not require understanding complex moves. As he approaches Daehun, he recalls Byamchin saying there is something unique about it. But before he can react, Daehun suddenly lunges at him in anger. There's no time to dodge. Relying on instinct, Eusang swiftly steps aside, letting Daehun's punch miss. Using the momentum, he grabs Daehun's arm and grips his collar. With a sharp pivot, he turns and slams Daehun hard onto the ground. Watching him lie unconscious, Eusang recognizes the power of Byamchin's technique, realizing the fight ended exactly as his mentor predicted, without landing a single punch. The entire class falls silent, eyes locked on the scene before them. Eusang glances around, noticing their stunned faces. This reaction feels unfamiliar, yet he prefers it over their usual expressions. His gaze returns to Daehun, who coughs as he struggles to stand. Watching him closely, Eusang knows the real fight is just beginning. With a slight smirk, he remarks that Daehun should be grateful. He chose not to hurt him further. He warns him to think twice before trying to attack again. Daehun stands frozen, his shock clear. Eusang then recalls a past conversation with his mentor, Byamchin Choi. Byamchin once admitted that he had suffered even worse in school. Surprised, Eusang had stared at him as Byamchin casually revealed he had been beaten up about 30 times by the same bully. Still processing the story, Eusang had asked who could have dared to lay a hand on a professional fighter. Smirking, Byamchin had flipped the question, asking if Eusang truly thought he had always been strong. When Eusang hesitated, Byamchin laughed, explaining that he was once small and had started training later than most. He had often wondered why he was always the one getting beaten. Now, those same bullies avoided class reunions, probably ashamed of who he had become. With a confident glance, he had reassured Eusang that there was no reason to fear anyone, especially when he had Korea's highest-paid fighter as his mentor. Back in the classroom, Daehun stiffens, fully realizing that Eusang is no longer the weakling he used to torment. The shift in his presence is overwhelming. As murmurs spread through the crowd, students whisper about Daehun's downfall. They note how he suddenly seems helpless, unable to back up his usual tough talk. Frustration boils inside him, and just as he is about to react, his eyes snap back to Eusang, only to widen in shock. Eusang is already mid-kick. With no time to dodge, Daehun takes a direct hit to the face and crashes to the floor. Eusang looms over him, his gaze cold. He questions whether Daehun really thinks it's safe to look away in the middle of a fight. Clutching his face, Daehun barely processes Eusang calling him an idiot, mocking him for being careless. At that moment, a group of gang members enters the classroom. only to freeze at the sight of Daehoon groaning on the floor. The mood shifts and the students tense up, recognizing the group as the same ones who once bullied Eusang. The tension rises when they spot Jongdae Choi himself among them. Jongdae steps forward, his expression unreadable as his cold eyes fix on Eusang. He states that he originally came to praise Eusang for his impressive performance, but after seeing Daehoon beaten, his expectations have completely changed. Their gazes lock, neither one moving as the air thickens with tension. The class watches, waiting to see what will happen next. Jongdae fixes his gaze on Eusang before telling him to step outside, saying there are too many people watching. However, Eusang hides his nervousness behind a smile, recalling how he still trembles despite practicing in front of a mirror multiple times to control his emotions. He had once glared at his own reflection, realizing he had no reason to be afraid, and deciding to speak his mind whenever he met bullies. Now, in the classroom, he looks at Jongdae and calmly says he prefers to talk here, in front of everyone. Hearing that, one of Jongdae's friends gets angry and tries to charge at Eusang. However, Jongdae stops him and warns Eusang to listen, adding that he does not like to repeat himself. Before Eusang can respond, a large, muscular student appears outside the classroom and tells Jongdae's group to move aside, saying he wants to enter. One of Jongdae's friends turns to him and angrily asks if the guy does not even notice they are in the middle of something. However, he stops mid-sentence, realizing that the student before them is too muscular for them to challenge. The student Jinmun Kook notices a hesitation and asks what they mean by doing something in the class. Jongdae turns to him and instantly recognizes him, addressing him by name and asking why he has come. The class watches in shock, realizing that even Jinmun is taking an interest in Eusang. Jinmun steps forward and asks Jongdae if he is the one causing trouble in Eusang's class. He then says that Jongdae must be the bully Eusang mentioned in Coming Fist. Jongdae looks at him and asks if he knows Eusang, to which Jinmun nods. He declares that Eusang is a real man among real men for standing up to them and taking the bold step of joining Coming Fist Season 2. Eusang listens as Jinmun explains how he was inspired by Eusang's life story, determination, appearance, tenacity, and the attention he brings. Jinmun then looks at Eusang and says he became his fan after watching the show. As he turns back to Jongdae, he calls him trash, to which Jongdae scoffs, calling Jinmun a second-generation Roland Gorilla Jr. and calling him crazy. Outside the classroom, students watch as the two exchange insults. Among them, Jin wonders why Jongdae even called her here. Just then, her attention shifts as a girl named Baeol Kim walks past them. Hearing the name, Jin feels a sense of familiarity. A few seconds later, she remembers that Baeol Kim is a student from Class 1-1 and a popular social media figure with over 1.7 million followers on TikTok and around 350,000 on Instagram. Pointing toward Eusang's classroom, Baeol says she wants to meet the boy who became famous for a recent incident. Since they attend the same school, she felt it was only right to visit him, especially since their school gained attention because of him. As she approaches the classroom, she confidently states that his name is Eusang Lee. Hearing this, Jin is left in shock, still unable to accept that Eusang, whom she considers a loser, is the one making waves.